So like I mentioned, I do have some thoughts on this TikTok that I saw going around on Twitter and Instagram today. Whenever you follow a lot of hip hop accounts and shit like that, a lot of times the same video will get passed around 100 times a day, and you end up seeing it a bunch. And I do have some thoughts on it. So I'm gonna put it up on screen. I'm gonna let you guys watch it first, just in case you guys haven't seen it, and then I'll give my thoughts. So the NFR podcast account on TikTok posted this video where they have 3 different takes. They have 3 different hip hop takes that I found pretty interesting. Here it is.
The Melodic Blue by Baby Keem is a better album than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar. A lot of people have been making this claim. What do you think?
Ooh.
Look at your face.
Who is a lot of people, by the way?
I can't believe
Listen,
it.
no. Okay, I think there's definitely things to be said about the Melodic Blue being a fantastic listen, but Mr. On the Big Steppers is definitely better.
Better album?
Lyrics-wise,
I am listening to the Melodic Blue a bit more. Personally.
Okay, reasonable, but it's still not a better album than Mr. Morale. Okay?
I agree with that. Next up, Nothing Was the Same by Drake is a better album than Yeezus by Kanye West.
That is very respectable, actually.
I have words about this one.
A lot more replay value, at least for me. I know the Kanye fans are going to come
What's the
after
better
me.
album?
Nothing Was the Same, though.
Yeah?
The song concepts are better, the rapping's better on it, the production's better on Yeezus. But even at that, the production, Nothing Was the Same, is super iconic.
Yeah.
Boy Wonder, 40. So, yes, I think it is a reasonable take.
All right, I think you're 2 for 2 with your opinions today. But next up, Perfect Timing by Nav is a better album than I Never Liked You by Future.
Oh,
This is a dicey one
this
here, bro.
is a dicey one. I mean, there's so many people that fuck with the I Never Liked You track list. I have 4 or 5 songs I've mentioned on previous recordings, but yeah, I do think so. I do think Perfect Timing is a better album than I Never Liked You. And listen, it's not Nav's most consistent track list, but you're going to find so many low-key bangers on there. So, yes, I do think that is a good take.
So, we've got some shit to talk about. Okay, so my thoughts on this take. I want to start off by saying everyone's entitled to their own opinion. It's music. There is no objectivity in music. It's all subjective. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we have content creators who are able to post their own opinions and their own takes on music. I think it's a great thing that we can all talk about it, collaborate, and comment on each other's opinions. But let's just try and always keep it respectful, because like I said, there is no objectivity in music and it all is very personal. So I'm not saying that these guys are wrong, because it's just their opinion. There is no right opinion. I'm just here to give mine. And I do disagree with all 3 of their takes. I do, unfortunately. I think that the one that I have probably the most to say about is the second one, the Nothing Was the Same versus Yeezus. But we'll go in order. So the first take was that the Melodic Blue is a better album than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And while I can understand why someone might say that, based on their definition of better album, but I have to disagree. I'll say this. Baby Keem did his thing on the Melodic Blue. I think the first time that I heard it, I gave it like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. It was very enjoyable. I do like the production on the Melodic Blue. I do think it is catchy. I do think that it is a very impressive album, especially for somebody who was so young, like Baby Keem, or at least from that younger generation of rappers. It is an impressive album. It is a great album. I just don't see it being better than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in terms of complexity, dynamics, versatility, the actual rapping ability of Kendrick Lamar compared to Baby Keem. Like, there is no comparison to be made there. Storytelling, the societal issues that Kendrick Lamar tackles on there. Performance, I don't know if I've mentioned that, but the performance in songs like We Cry Together is just crazy. You know, the level of introspection, the level of depth, really, the production, the layers, the amount of polish that is on that album. It's just, it ends up winning over the Melodic Blue. Now, I can understand someone who defines good music as being replayable and catchy music. I can understand that, and that person saying the Melodic Blue is a better album. Because I would say that Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers it can be pretty heavy at times. And when a song is complex and conceptual and a little deep, it can be a little tough to replay it over and over and over again. You're gonna come back to it when you're doing an album listen. You know, you're not gonna have it in your daily rotation because it's not necessarily a catchy song. It's a more complex, emotionally involved, deep track that can make you feel something. It's more of an experience. The Melodic Blue has a lot of tracks that are just bangers, fun, easy to replay and come back to. and it's a catchier album. So if that's what you're looking for, I can understand you saying the Melodic Blue is a better album. But I mean, if you're comparing the two in terms of, like I said, depth, lyricism, production value, level of polish, lyrical ability, rapping ability, performance, you got to give it to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, right? You got to give it to him, to Kendrick Lamar, over Baby Keem in that aspect. So that's why I disagree with the first one. The second take, though, is the one that I feel like is the second take is one that I feel could go either way. People who say Yeezus is better, I get it. People who say Nothing Was the Same is better, I absolutely get it. I personally think Yeezus is the better album. There's a lot of people who think that Nothing Was the Same as Drake at his peak. I personally disagree. I think that he kind of peaked at If You're Reading This is my favorite Drake project. But like I said, a lot of people consider Nothing Was the Same to be Drake's best album. It certainly is very catchy. There's a lot of great songs on there. I think they mentioned in their TikTok the production is great as well. Drake's rapping ability is great. Tuscan Leather, one of his best intros. I do believe that Keep the Family Close is his best introduction, but Tuscan Leather for the rap fans is going to be at that top spot, which I totally understand. So it is a great album. The only reason I think Yeezus is better is because I think the production on Yeezus is better. That's a subjective phrase in itself. I think it's better. But like I said, all of it is subjective. But I do think the production value on Yeezus is higher. I think the fact that Kanye was being so experimental, it was such a hard left from everything that people expected from him at the time. His bravery in making that album, I think, is to be commended. How influential it is? Absolutely. It's a more impactful, influential album than Nothing Was the Same. A more groundbreaking album than Nothing Was the Same. Absolutely. It is a more concise offering with a higher quality, which I do also believe has to be commended, because you guys know, if you've been watching the channel for a while, how much I appreciate a shorter album with more to offer than a longer album with some bloat and some fat that could be trimmed off of it. And I mean, if we're just being real, New Slaves, I Am a God, Blood on the Leaves, Bound 2, Hold My Liquor, I don't think that there are any songs that can really be put up against some of the songs on this Yeezus track list. I think it's just too strong. So I do have to give it to Yeezus over Nothing Was the Same. The third take is actually the one that I care the least about, just because of how absurd of a take I think it is. I don't think there's a single song on that Nav album that can even be held up to Puffin' on Zooties or Overplayed As It Is, Wait For You, I think is better than everything on that Nav album. I just think it's such a crazy comparison to make that I feel like it's the easiest hot take for me to just like shrug off. Like, oh, that's just absurd, right? I do think that, the Future album is just miles better than that Nav album. There's really isn't that much for me to even say about it. On that Nav album, the first time I heard it, I felt bored. I felt like Nav was just robotic, formulaic. I don't know. That Future one, I just think is absolutely better in every aspect, every regard. I didn't really give that third take the time of day. I don't really feel like it warrants it. But the first two I felt had some merit to them, that I felt like they would be interesting to talk about. I felt like they would be interesting to mention. And like I said, I think it's a beautiful thing that people are able to just expose their music opinions on the internet. And even though I disagree with all three of their takes, I do think that it has sparked some interesting discussions and some interesting, conversations, which I really appreciate. And I can appreciate their content for that reason. But yeah, I felt like I should mention that. I felt like I wanted to talk about that because that is making the rounds. People are mentioning that TikTok. I think Fantano posted a reel or a reply to it on TikTok. I saw Tabby debating with some people on Twitter, talking about the Melodic Blue versus Mr. Morale. So any content about music that generates this much controversy and conversation and debate, I think is interesting. So I appreciate NFR Podcast for putting the video out there. I just unfortunately have to disagree with them on this one. It is what it is.